No breakthrough near Rodynske. Ukraine's Azov Corps dismisses Russian capture claims. That headline just dropped this morning, January 4th, 2026. I'm Alex, and with me is Arya.
Welcome to the Deep Dive, where we give you sharp, no-nonsense breakdowns of global defense, new military tech, and, well, big strategic shifts. And today, we are plunging straight into the Donetsk front. We're going to cover a really critical section of the line where the fight over a single town, it reveals everything about Russia's evolving, brutal tactics and Ukraine's almost desperate need for rapid adaptation. We're going to unpack the terrifying lessons from that massive, costly breach near Dobropilya just a few months ago, and how that successful but, completely exhausting firefighting operation is shaping the defense of Pokrovsk right now. This is where the future of this war is being fought, not in grand sweeps, but in these tiny, deadly fights. But before we get into the details, if you're unsubscribed to Defense Reports, it's your go-to source for timely, in-depth military and defense reports.
Alex, the mission today is it's incredibly critical. We are looking at an intense, high-stakes battle zone in Donetsk. And we have to separate the verifiable facts from this constant cloud of Russian disinformation. And our sources, they're showing us two really interconnected stories that define this fight.
Right.
First, there's the huge strategic success Ukraine had in reversing that massive 15-kilometer Russian breakthrough near Dobropilya that was between August and October of 2025.
A real moment of crisis.
A huge one.
Yeah.
And second, we see Russia's brutal pivot away from those failed massed assaults. They've shifted to a new style of meat grinder combat around Pokrovsk that relies on infiltration and advanced drone logistics, which is continuing right into this month.
Okay, so let's start with the immediate situation, the flashpoint. Rodynsk. The Russian Ministry of Defense made these huge claims on January 2nd that they'd captured the town.
And that's part of a pattern, right? Russia has been pushing these claims of sweeping victories around Pokrovsk, around Kupiansk, for months. But this time, Ukraine's response was, well, it was almost instant and very specific.
The source confirmation is really detailed, which, gives it a lot of credibility. Ukraine's air assault forces, the first Azov Corps, they flat out refuted those reports on January 4th, and they didn't just issue some blanket denial.
No, not at all. They name names. They detail exactly which units were holding the line, which is a really smart info tactic. They confirmed the 20th and 14th National Guard Brigades, plus the 132nd Separate Reconnaissance Battalion, are holding positions inside Rodynske and on its outskirts.
That level of detail is pretty rare.
It signals a direct, very immediate counter to Russia's propaganda.
And the timing feels crucial. This isn't just about morale, right? It's about denying them any kind of tactical momentum.
Precisely. Russia needs to show progress to justify the incredible cost of this winter's fighting. If they can convince people they hold a key town like Rodynske, it pressures Ukraine, demoralizes defenders. But despite the denial, the fighting is still incredibly intense. Just on January 2nd, Russian forces tried to mass troops for an assault on Frontline. It failed. But the point is, the pressure is constant. It's a grinding slugfest. Every meter denied is a win for Ukraine.
So to really get why these units are under so much pressure now, we have to look back a few months to the disaster Ukraine barely averted near Dobropilya.
That's right. That whole firefighting operation really set the stage for what we're seeing today. It was late August 2025. Russian forces achieved this major deep breakthrough, a 15-kilometer penetration.
And for anyone listening, that 15 kilometers creates what's called a salient, right? A bulge in the line.
Exactly. A bulge that sticks deep into your territory, surrounded on three sides. It's a nightmare scenario.
And if that salient is allowed to stabilize, it's a catastrophe.
Absolutely. The threat was existential for the Donetsk front. If Russia had dug in there, key hubs like Pokrovsk and Kostiantynivka would have been outflanked, cut off.
Or hit from the rear.
Even worse, they could have approached the Kramatorsk agglomeration from the west, hitting Ukraine's deep defenses and supply lines.
But the leadership initially downplayed it. I saw reports calling it isolated sabotage group activity.
It was a serious disconnect, and Kiev quickly realized this wasn't some small raid. It was a full-scale breakthrough that needed everything they had. They mobilized pretty much every available reserve.
And they didn't even call it a counteroffensive?
No, because it wasn't about seizing initiative. They called it a costly and high-stakes rapid reaction operation. True firefighting.
But throwing all those resources at one spot on a front that's already so stretched thin, that creates weaknesses elsewhere, doesn't it?
That is the core strategic paradox Ukraine is facing. Yes, it creates huge risks, but letting that salient consolidate meant losing the entire operational depth of Donetsk. They had no choice.
So they brought in the elite units.
The deployment was massive. The 93rd Mechanized Brigade, Air Assault Forces, Special Forces, brand new assault regiments.
And our sources say the whole thing was commanded by the 1st Corps of the National Guard under Azov commander Denis Prokopenko.
And that coordination was the key. Azov's role was vital in uniting all these different units, getting them to talk to each other, establishing blocking lines, especially at Zolody-Kolodias.
I thought the specific tactic they used was fascinating, this pocket tactic from the 1st Separate Assault Regiment.
Yeah, Commander Perun, Filatov's method, pockets first. So instead of hitting the Russian spearheads head-on,
They bypassed them.
exactly, they went for the logistics. They aggressively cut supply lines from behind, which isolated the advanced Russian units into these small, unsupported pockets.
And then they could just clean them up one by one.
Methodically encircle and eliminate them. It's logistical strangulation. And it worked.
The results were decisive. By mid-October, late November, the salient was cleared. Reportedly, 910 Russian soldiers killed in that area by August 16th alone.
The success was undeniable. But, like you said, the lessons are bittersweet. Ukraine proved it could handle a crisis, that its elite forces are agile. But the cost, the reserves they burned through just to plug that one hole, it shows how dangerously thin they are stretched.
So if that mass breakthrough failed so spectacularly, what's the new strategy Russia is using now around Pokrovsk?
Well, the failure at Dobropilia forced a total rethink for them. They realized those big mechanized assaults are just drone magnets.
The way they get spotted instantly.
And then obliterated by artillery. So the new approach is infiltration over assault. They're moving in tiny groups, 2 or 3 soldiers at a time, just trying to slip past the drones.
That must completely change the fight for the infantry on the ground. You're not defending against a column anymore. You're looking for ghosts.
It's a paradigm shift. You're dealing with enemy soldiers who might just lie still in a ditch for 5 days, gathering recon before they make a move.
For 5 days.
Up to 5 days. And it's all enabled by a much more advanced drone setup. There are 2 parts to it. First, you've got these immediate tactical recon drones. The pilots are basically attached directly to these 2 or 3 man teams.
So they have their own eyes in the sky in real time.
Exactly. And the second part is the logistical strangulation. This is maybe the most sophisticated threat.
The FPVs.
The advanced fiber optic FPVs. They're using them to specifically target Ukrainian supply routes.
Wait, fiber optics, so they trail a physical cable behind them,
A hair-thin cable, yeah. It spools out as they fly,
which makes them immune to jamming.
pretty much. They're almost impossible to stop with traditional electronic warfare. So they're slowly, methodically strangling the logistics to empty the trenches before the infantry even gets there.
And that brings us to the fighting in Pokrovsk itself. Commanders are calling it the worst.
Because it is. It's just brutal, close-quarters combat where the only thing that holds territory is a single person with a rifle. You hear these harrowing stories. The soldier, jockey, the former factory worker, ends up in hand-to-hand combat
I read that. Ripped the rifle out of the enemy's hands.
and then had to use a knife. It's primal. It's desperate survival.
And on top of all that, there's the chemical threat now.
This is a really disturbing escalation. The 93rd Brigade troops have to carry gas masks all the time.
Because they're just dropping gas on the trenches.
Frequently. Not always lethal stuff, but things that cause fumes, internal burns. The goal is to smoke them out, force them to abandon their positions, make them vulnerable. It's trench warfare from 100 years ago.
When you combine all that, it really just comes down to manpower, doesn't it? Attrition.
That's the core difficulty. Ukraine struggles to refill its ranks, while Russia keeps finding more people, sometimes offering huge salaries.
Up to $2,700, I saw.
For them, a drone is cheaper than a life, but they still have more lives to spend. Ukraine has to be smarter.
Okay, so while all this grinding horror is happening on the front, what's going on back in Kyiv, there was a big shakeup announced.
Right at the start of the year, January 2nd and 3rd, President Zelensky announced a major government and military overhaul. The biggest move is proposing Mikhailo Fedorov, the Minister of Digital Transformation, to become the new defense minister.
That's a huge signal. Fedorov is the drone guy.
He's synonymous with the drone line project, with domestic manufacturing, with AI integration. Moving him to the MOD says the future of this war is technological. It's about prioritizing Ukraine's own agility over waiting for Western arms.
And the outgoing minister, Shmyhal, is slated for energy minister, which also makes sense.
Absolutely. Protecting the grid is a core defense mandate now. But it's interesting, Zelensky was very clear that he is not considering replacing Commander-in-Chief Syrskyi. at least not yet.
So it's a reboot of the system, not necessarily the top command.
The technological and governmental reset has to happen first. That was the message.
And what about the diplomatic front? With Russia digging in with these new tactics, is there any hope for a peace plan?
Well, Kyiv is still trying. They met with Western national security advisors on January 3rd. But Russia's position is completely intractable. They're already setting the stage to reject any peace plan.
How?
They've said they refuse to discuss territorial issues. So no talk about Donbass, no talk about a demilitarized zone. They believe they can win this militarily.
So with that door slammed shut, Ukraine is demanding much tougher security guarantees.
Much tougher. Zelensky specifically stressed the need for the physical presence of foreign troops on Ukrainian soil.
That's a massive step.
He named names. He said the military presence of the UK and France is mandatory.
Wow.
It's an urgent call for real, tangible commitment, not just paper guarantees that mean nothing without troops on the ground to back them up.
You know, this whole deep dive really shows that the fight for a small town like Rodynske is a microcosm of the whole war. You see Ukraine's incredible adaptation near Dobropilya, but then you see them forced to adapt all over again to Russia's new, brutal tactics around Pokrovsk.
It's a constant cycle. Adaptation and information control are everything, even as the human cost just keeps climbing. And that brings us to a really crucial question for you to think about. The successful strategy that cleared the Dobropilya salient, it depended on overwhelming coordinated force against big, visible Russian units.
Right, the pocket strategy.
Exactly. But now, as Russia switches to these tiny, almost undetectable infiltration tactics, moving one soldier at a time, using these jam-proof drones lying low for days, how can Ukraine's elite forces adapt that successful strategy to eliminate these individual threats without completely burning through the scarce reserves they need to defend the entire vast front?
That balance between tactical success and strategic survival.
That is what will define the next few months of this war.
You've been listening to Defense Report by Alex and Aria, where we analyze the latest in military strategy, global defense, and advanced weaponry. Subscribe to Defense Reports, your go-to source for timely, in-depth military and defense reports. We'll catch you next time.